She Will is a 2021 horror film starring Alex Krieg about an aging actress that is overcoming a surgery and takes a trip with her caretaker to a remote location in Scotland to heal. Now, the retreat or cabin that they're on has a dark past of witches that she begins to get drawn into. So this is an interesting movie. Now, the first thing I noticed about this movie is that it does a great job of really kind of sucking you into the film. Now, there are some movies that somehow they're really able to get a good feeling for being able to invite you into the world of the film, and this is a solid job of that. It does this by having some great visuals, of course, but also some long, quiet moments, which for me, quiet moments will always get me leaning forward in my chair more than the big loud ones. Like the fastest way to get me involved in a movie is just make it intriguing. The best way to do that is do these long sort of quiet moments. Now, so starting off, I was totally on board with this movie. Unfortunately, it does it does sort of change that up, which is unfortunate. It has this side plot, I guess I'll call it a side plot, of this retreat has a group of artistic people that are there for the week that she's there. And so whenever they films these scenes, it feels like it's from another movie because it like looked different, it sounded different, it even felt like it was shot differently. So maybe this was done on purpose, I don't know, but it just didn't work for me and it constantly kind of took me out because on the one hand, it's this great introspective journey that this woman who is going through a double mastectomy and is trying to reconcile what that means for her life and her career in the film business. And then we kind of cut to these super over-the-top comical characters doing weird artsy stuff. That was just a kind of a big negative for me, which is too bad because I wish it sort of stayed with Veronica and her assistant and their experiences within the retreat and just kept it a quiet and personal kind of journey. I mean, thankfully there aren't many of these group scenes, but I did feel like it retracted from the rest. Now, for the story itself, I really like the exploration that Veronica takes as she comes to terms with both her recent trauma of her operation, but this also brings up old wounds of a deeper trauma. Now, on the land that they're staying was the site of the last women to be burned at the stake for being witches. And so the towns say that the ashes from those women had seeped into the ground, giving it a healing quality. Now, this is used as sort of a advertisement thing for the retreat, and so you have like these groups of weird artist people come and perform like these spiritual sessions, but Veronica just wants to be left alone. But the call of these sort of witches begins to be too much for her, and it starts her on this quite different path of recovery than she expected. So the story is her kind of slowly being seduced by these spirits of the past and her getting drawn further and further into this world. Now, first thing I'll say is Alex Krieg is absolutely captivating, and all the scenes with her in it are absolutely fantastic. I mean, I will say I almost think that she was underused too much, if you can believe that. I mean, most of the scenes do tend to rely a lot on a lot of visual representations as to what's happening to her with the witches, but that entails sort of a lot of quick cutting between visuals as well as some certain imagery of her kind of walking around in a trance and kind of exploring the land, which is fine, but that does mean that there's a lot of the movie of her just kind of doing that, like walking around in a trance and exploring sort of the world around her. And that's a bit of a shame because when present and engaging, she really commands the screen. Without getting into too many spoilers, as the story progresses, things start to focus more specifically on a tragic event that happened when she was 13 years old on a film set, which this is fine as far as dealing with trauma. I mean, who am I to say how long it takes to get over any particular trauma anyway? The only issue I really had with this was that this particular one was 50 years or so ago, and we never really get to see how that trauma kind of affected her life after that. We only kind of see her in her present condition, where there are certainly more immediate concerns with her cancer and diagnosis. So it's not bad that they tend to focus on this 50-year-old trauma. It just doesn't quite connect in a way that I found super engaging. I mean, trauma is trauma, I get it. But I think having the witch's experience tie more into what's happening more presently in her life, I think would have would have engaged me a little bit more in what was happening. I mean, the childhood trauma certainly could have been there and have sort of opened up a door and led her down this particular path that she's on. But maybe that could have been maybe another thing, as opposed to in this movie, it seems to focus on the thing, which was a little bit of a miss for me. I would rate this movie a B. I found the overall story a little hard to connect all the dots. Now, I just felt it was laid out a little too vaguely. It's hard to know exactly what the intention of the witches were. It seems like it might be a give and take thing, but I couldn't figure out the take element. And so their motivations specifically weren't entirely clear to me, which in turn left me a little bit hollow. So that's why only a B. But certainly, I would recommend checking it out because Alice Krige does such an amazing job. But let me know what you think.